Chapter 4. Having rapidly inquired into what is told of us of the interdependent originations, we may return to the examination of the theories concerning memories, which was begun in Chapter 2. In later Buddhism, that is to say between the 5th and the 6th centuries, an important place has been given to the theories concerning the alaya vijnana. These theories were not exactly invented at this period, for their seeds already existed previously, but their bringing into prominence and their development was the work of the doctors of the Mahayana. Alaya is a Sanskrit word that means dwelling, receptacle, store. We meet it in the well-known name of the high mountain chain which separates India from Tibet, Himalaya. That is to say, dwelling or receptacle of the snows. Alaya vijnana is then a receptacle of the consciousness. The alaya vijnana, receptacle of consciousness, is not mentioned in Tibet in the popular teaching of an elementary kind. We find it in the kind called Nang, inner teachings, and in the Sang's something or other teachings, which are oral and secret. What is told us about it? Each action, either physical or mental, every movement occurring either on the plane of gross matter or in the plane of the mind, causes an emission of energy. To use the established expression, it produces a seed. This seed, in the same way as all material seeds, tends, given favorable circumstances, to produce a being of the same species as that of the parent who has transmitted the seed. The seed of an oak tends to produce an oak. The seed of an animal, dog, or bird tends to produce a dog or a bird. Likewise, the innumerable energy seeds launched into the universe by desire, aversion, love, hatred, and all the actions caused by these feelings, by attachment to individual existence with the material activity which it excites in order to preserve that individual existence, to perpetuate it, to increase its power and enlarge its sphere of action. All of these seeds tend to reproduce the counterparts of their parents, either psychic or material. In order that the seed should be sown, it is in no way necessary that the feelings we experience should be materialized in action. The aspirations which we entertain, without realizing them, those also which we restrain our thoughts, of whatever kind they may be, unceasingly give out seeds. Furthermore, the hidden activity always at work in spite of ourselves in the subconscious part of our being is one of the most powerful sources from which are thrown out these seeds. It is necessary to go further, say the secret teachings. It is necessary to understand, to grasp, to see that there is not a blade of grass, not a grain of sand, which is not a sower of seed by the activity of its physical life, and by that of a psychic life, peculiar to its species, which we must in no way imagine as similar to our own. There cannot happen the least movement in this world which is movement, without this movement starting other movements, other manifestations of energy, tending to repetitions in dependence on memories, or as the Tibetans call them, on propensities. Each of our physical or mental movements is the fruit of causes coming from the whole universe and has its repercussions in the whole universe. Thus opens up the working, without beginning or end, of the activity which is the universe. According to one of the theories concerning the energy seeds thrown out in the universe, these are stored up in a receptacle, where they remain in the state of latent energies, which in order to manifest themselves only await the appearance of suitable conditions just as the seed stored up in a barn will not develop until it is put in contact with damp earth. Nevertheless, suitable conditions continually appear. Thus, while some seeds flow steadily into the receptacle, other seeds equally steadily flow out in the form of habits, of cities, of memories, either of a physical or a psychic kind, which encourages the repetition of material actions or mental activities which have occurred previously. What are the conditions which allow the germination of the seeds? They are themselves the product of the seeds, for nothing exists outside the round of actions, and their fruit of the enchainment of causes and the effects, the cause being the effect of the preceding cause, and the effects becoming the cause of another effect. According to the expression of certain doctors of the Mahayana, the alaya is an uninterrupted river with a continuous current. This comparison of the river which flows takes us far from the idea of an abode or receptacle of the seeds, which calls up rather the idea of immobility, of stagnation. Others have, however, retained in a greater or lesser degree, in different forms and under different names, the idea of immobility. A world which is nothing but movement makes them dizzy. They feel themselves out of their depth, and not finding the solid support to which they long to attach themselves, they imagine it ending by transforming the alaya into the womb, containing beings, an equivalent of the Brahman of the Vedantic philosophy. The oral secret teachings assume a very different position, in that they are based on the fundamental impermanence of all phenomena, and on the fact that these are compounded of various aggregates. The seeds, products of mental activity, which may or may not be associated with a material activity, and which include different elements, cannot be considered permanent. Like all formations, they consist of successive, fugitive instants. Hence, what sort of receptacle or of abode can one imagine which would contain an awaiting state, that is to say, in a state of repose, that which is elusive, having no appreciable duration? In truth, there exists only the perpetual flow, both continuous, it never stops, and discontinuous, it consists of distinct moments, of flashes of force, causes and effects which engender each other in such a way that the parent cause can never know its offspring effect, for it disappears while the latter emerges, or rather, it is its disappearance itself which constitute its effect, the new phenomenon. Lending some support of the theory of the alaya receptacle, Vasubandhu stated, "The act ends immediately after being born. Thus one cannot admit that it can itself produce the fruit, but it transmits to the root of consciousness virtualities, energies or seeds, which will produce its fruit. These virtualities are called vasana, or memory. It is this root of consciousness which receives the impressions comparable to the receptacle, out of which some have almost made a mystic personality. We shall see how it is regarded in the oral teachings. However, let us consider a declaration of Tang, reaffirming the idea of Vasubandhu, that fruit is not produced by the act, but is engendered by the intervention of the impression made by the act in the root of consciousness. The fruit is not of the character of the act, says the guy, for it is not directly engendered by the act. The secret teachings in no way contradict this view. The student has already been warned that the effect is never the product of a single cause, but always of several causes of unequal potency. Insofar as the seeds are concerned, they are from their beginning compounds, including different elements, Moreover, the environment into which they are thrown is itself a mixture of dissimilar elements, so that the seed, before producing an effect, will of necessity undergo many contacts with other seeds, and thus the impressions, as Vasubandhu named them, being superimposed in different ways, it will be rare that one will take the exact form of another. Thus, as a result of these contacts, of these superimpositions, seeds and impressions will become more or less different from their original nature. It follows that the memories, seeds, tendencies, habits, and so on never recreate the texture of the past, physical or psychic activities, after an absolutely identical pattern. The pattern which will be the future being influenced by the memories, will show resemblances, more or less marked, to the pattern of the past, but the copy will never be exactly the same. This excludes the possibility of any definite prophecy. Some people have thought that if one could know all the causes existing at the present moment, one could foresee their effect and thus behold the future of the future. This idea is rejected in the oral teachings. Based on the law of universal impermanence, while at the same time upholding the deterministic doctrine of the concatenation of causes and effects, these caution the student against the idea that the absolute determinism is within his reach. The sphere of probabilities is alone accessible to him. Even supposing that they are all known to him at a given moment, and that he could calculate at that moment the effects which are naturally produced by these causes at the moment which follows that one, these causes will have already undergone modifications as a result of their contact with other causes and forces. Not only will they never be identical with what they were before, but in reality, other causes of a different kind will have followed them. It follows from this that the effects which may be expected from these last will differ from those which one might have foreseen in the preceding moment. At the same time, similar activity takes place in the senses and in the mind of the observer, which they too are renewed from moment to moment. Which moment among these double current of fugitive phenomena could have shown a stable picture of cause suitable to serve as a basis for the exact determination of the elements which make up the face of the future? The Tibetans translate memory of consciousness in this way. Is this translation exact? The discussion of such a question is outside the plan of the present book. But what interests us in the meaning which the Tibetans give to this term in their secret teachings. The idea of a receptacle cannot be applied. Family property is called ji. The ji of an individual is the dwelling place, which, before becoming his, has been that of the family to which he belongs. In the figurative sense, ji can be the basis on which a doctrine is founded. Ji is also applied to the foundation of a building, to no matter what on which something is based. The knowledge which is put before us as being the basis of everything is that which distinguishes, that which separates a lot's names, forms, qualities. In short, it is that which carries out the arrangements of the world. The world is its work. That knowledge is a deception. It depends on our senses, each of them providing its contribution to the common fund. Thus one distinguishes knowledge acquired by the eye, form and color, knowledge acquired by the ear, sounds, knowledge acquired by the tongue, tastes, knowledge by the nose, odors, knowledge acquired by the whole epidermis, the results from the sensations produced by touch and contacts. And as the sixth, and by no means the least important, the knowledge acquired by the mind, that is to say by mental contacts, ideas which one has heard expressed, and so on.
Two other kinds of knowledge are also mentioned. Their meaning is widely different from Sanskrit words listed in the list of stuff drawn up by the savants of Indian Buddhism. One of them is shown as the sum of the 6 forms of knowledge listed above. It is the knowledge or understanding which is possessed by the darkened mind. In fact, it is false knowledge. It is the error which dominates that mind, which is incorrectly informed by the senses, which pass on to it their impressions. These impressions are always falsified by their inability to grasp reality. The understanding knowledge of the darkened mind is the ally of the understanding knowledge which grasps. The false notions which are held by the darkened, shadowed mind are grasped, assembled, and become motives inciting the action. A mental activity based on wrong knowledge builds up on its data an image of the world, which has no relation to reality. It is this world which we watch like a play, which unfolds outside of ourselves, while in fact there is nothing there but a canvas bearing many colored patterns, which we have woven and printed in ourselves according to the indications of our erroneous knowledge. Thus this knowledge, made up of the contributions of all the senses, is in no way a mythical receptacle, but our own consciousness, the basis of the phenomenal world, the whole of our universe. The river, with the current both continuous and discontinuous, made up of seeds, is nothing else than our mind, in which the impressions, understanding, knowledge, ideas, and so on, which they arouse, appear and disappear in series of separate moments, but arising constantly. At this point, the master, who is passing on to a pupil the secret teachings, puts a question to him. What do you mean by your mind when you speak of it, when you think of it? To express that which we call mind, the Tibetans have available 3 words, which are not fully interchangeable. They are sems, yid, and lo. Lo includes all the moods of the mind, agitated or calm, attentive, searching, listless, indifferent, impressionable or insensitive to exterior impressions, inclined towards discrimination, towards classification, or unaware of differences. The imaginative mind, or the mind solely occupied by the facts within reach. The understanding, or the dull mind. The agitated, passionate, or unimpressionable mind. The mind which works over ideas, collects them, reasons. The humbled, depressed, or alert mind, etc. All the forms in which the mind shows itself. Yid means more especially the mind considered as pure intellect. Sems has usually a wide application as the thinking principle, which distinguishes animated beings from things considered to be inert. Sems, as it is understood exoterically, has a meaning which comes close to namishes, in other words, consciousness, which transmigrates. Sems, having sense or mind, is an expression which in the literary language means all animated beings, including man, but in popular speech, only animals are thus called, and to employ it for a man would be insulting. The student of the secret teachings is, in most cases, taught the various meanings of the 3 words indicating the 3 aspects of the mind, so he understands the questions put to him when the master, using the generic term sends, what do you mean by your mind when you speak of it, when you think of it? In order to enable the pupil to perceive the diversity and the momentary nature of that which we call mind, the master insists on the different moods of it, some of which have been listed above. Just as the idea of an ego existing apart from the elements which constitute it has been disproved, so that of a mind existing apart from these moods, these forms of activity which manifest it, is equally denied. It Is it not this mind to which moods and forms of activity are attributed, while not identifying it with them, that most men take for their real and lasting ego? Yet, according to the statements which the Buddhist scriptures attribute to the Buddha, it would be, quote, "It would be better to consider the body as an ego than to consider the mind as such. For the body seems to last for a year, 2 years, or 100 years. But that which is called mind, thought, or knowledge appears and disappears in a perpetual state of change. Just as a monkey gamboling in the forest grasps a branch, then lets it go to seize another, so that which is called mind, thought, or knowledge appears and disappears in a perpetual change, day and night." End quote. The student studying the secret teachings has not only already familiarized himself with these theories, but he has tested their exactitude. During his meditations, while watching his mind with close attention, he has gained lagthrong, or, quote, "seeing more," than most men. He has contemplated the continual arising and disappearance of the ideas, of volitions, of memories, and so on, which pass like a procession of short-lived bubbles floating down a river. He has realized for himself that, quote, "mind is only a word indicating a series of mental phenomena." Despite everything, the deeply rooted habit of thinking on the basis of an ego may tend to cause him to narrow the extent of the mind. Thus, while holding it to be a current of transitory moments, he may at the same time accept either consciously or unconsciously the theory of the Santyanas, isolated currents of consciousness and of mental operations following individually on their courses. Now, according to the secret teachings, what must be understood, seen, felt, is that there does not exist any current which is my mind, and therefore it follows that there is not a plurality of currents which are the minds of other individuals, but only a single current, which is kunji napashi, the sum of all mental activity at work without any cognizable beginning. It is in this totality that what we call our mind is immersed. Our mind, which we try so hard to separate and define. Furthermore, this effort is useless. Whether we are aware of it or not, the thoughts, the desires, the needs which we feel for life, our thirst for it, nothing of all this is completely ours, for all of it is collective. It is the flowing river of incalculable moments of consciousness, having its source in the impenetrable depths of eternity. Here is found again, in another form, the conception of the alaya vijnana, a mixture of seeds, themselves the fruit of acts, determining new acts by the effect of memories, as the Indians say, or expressed by the Tibetans, of tendencies. Nevertheless, it is not enough to listen to the teachings of such things or to read an explanation of them in philosophic works. They must be seen by oneself as a result of insight, the penetrating vision, lang thong, which causes one to see more than we have seen up to the present. Lang thong, the transcendent insight which sees beyond appearances and penetrates below the surface, is able, like any other faculty, to be developed and cultivated. It is for us to do this, and so to prepare ourselves for the most fascinating of explorations.